Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition. And I know we don't have Reborn, she's out doing things, and remember she's still in Tehran at this point. But we thought, however you want to look at it, we would bring you a review of Cryptozoic Entertainment's DC deck building game Rebirth. This is a 1 to 4 player game. It's for ages 15 and up. In time, I think they put it in an hour, but it seems to take me much more than an hour when I'm playing by myself to get through it. But I also put in the caveat that I tend to play as if there were 2 players playing and I just play it myself. There is a 1-player version of the game. I haven't tried it. Maybe I should. I just haven't. I already, from having the other deck building games, tend to just play 2 hands of cards. I feel like you have more flexibility that way. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into it. So I don't know if I want to have the box here or not. That's the thing. So here's the thing. This game, let's look at it for player count first. So 1 to 4 players. Okay, I tend to like to have games that you can play bigger counts. But now with Reborn, I tend to actually like, or not tend to, I like 2-player games a lot more, games that can play with 2 players well. I definitely think this is a game that can play 2 players well. So if you're looking for a game to play by yourself, to play as 2 players, or up to 4, I haven't played it with 4, but I can arguably say I've played these games with 2 players, and they work well. I've played by myself, and they work well. But there's player count. Then you got theme. It is DC Universe, right? It is DC characters. Depending on which one you have, you play Superman and Batman, Aquaman. There's lots of different sets, and you can mix and match. I should have brought it out. It's super heavy. But I have the multiverse box. I have everything for this game up till now, and you can mix and match all of it, as well as mix and matching it with any of the, I think it's the Cerberus game systems, and Cryptozoic has a handful of them. But this is DC Universe. So theme-wise is DC Universe. Where it might fall for a little bit for some people is you pick up cards. So for example, Batman's Batcave, it's an ongoing ability. I have it set out over here with Superman, which allows him to get rid of a card to move an extra space, right? And if you don't know how to play this version, you can check out our how to play, but each spot's a space. There's city spaces, and there's actual spaces where they're just cards in between the city spaces, right? So it's weird that Superman would use the Batmobile to get around. It's just kind of interesting. But if you look past that, it's fine. I also look at it as you're building a team, and whoever your main character is, I don't look at it as I'm playing Superman. I do sometimes go, I'm playing Superman, Batman, but I look at it as characters building teams up, right? So I look at it as you're kind of building teams up, because you can get heroes. In this version, you can't have villains on your team or super villains, but you can get heroes to play with, and gadgets and super abilities and things like that. Same, you might have Batman and he has super breath or whatever, one of the abilities. And it seems weird because it's Batman. So I look at it more as building up a team and then using that team. And if you're playing like I am with 2 hands, it's a team building a bigger team. You're just building up teams of superheroes. You're putting the Justice League together, Teen Titans, whatever version you're playing, and you're going after the villain. So I do think the theme works. It's a little askew, but the gameplay is pretty fun. So let's go ahead and jump into the gameplay. First off, the deck building game series tends to be a very simple deck builder. It doesn't usually tend to be that fiddly. Now with this version, there are destinations to get to. If villains get to their destinations and they attack you all the time, it starts changing the way the game goes. So this is the point where I'm going to say, as you see, there's still a stack of cards here. I did not beat this one. I got about halfway through the stack, and I realized because of choices that I made somewhere along the way, I just got myself stuck in the mud. These heroes were not going to get out of the situation they're set in. I don't know if it was having a whole bunch of villains early on and they got out on the board and I didn't control them. But every round I would have to discard a move card from my deck. I would have to get rid of a card of 0 or a 0 level card, which is your starter punches and moves, which are your beginning cards. Have to put it at the bottom of my stack. I had to take a weakness really quick. Mr. Mixelplix. I'm probably saying it wrong. I think it's Mr. Mixelplix. Anyways, he came out. He's a super villain. He's an interesting one because he's constantly moving around the board. And with that moving, he's dragging you with him. And there's no one destination that he goes to. He goes to multiple destinations. So I think that started dragging me around the board, and I was just getting beat up. You can't see, but all the weakness cards are gone because they're in the hero decks. So let's see. Let's pull up a hand. Well, see, there's one hand. If you guys can see, have one weakness in there. Based on what's going on right now, I already have to get rid of that card and put it at the bottom. There's no more weaknesses to get, so that's nice. But my hands got pretty, oh, here we go. See, here's Superman's hand. 3 weaknesses. These cards just gone. They're gone. They do nothing. They just clog up your deck. So the mechanics tend to be, for the base game or the earlier versions, they tend to be pretty easy to follow through. So what I found with Rebirth itself, with the destinations and some of these mechanics, you also have a threat tracker that adds different things. It can get a bit fiddly, right? And what I mean by fiddly is there's a lot of things to track, right? And I even find myself in the basic movement of the game, I find myself going, so what you do is on your turn, the villain attacks, the villain moves, and then you put out a card. Sounds really simple, but when you're going through this, and especially when you're getting bogged down, you start forgetting to put out that card. You start forgetting to, villain attack usually get down, but villain moves sometimes. You don't move the villain because the attack makes you do so much with your hand, especially how it is right now. And then you're like, oh crap, did I move the villains last go around? Because if I did, some of these are going to be closer to destination, which is going to cause more problems. Did I put out a card? I don't know, right? So it does get a little fiddly. It's not to the point where you can't not keep it under control. My game got out of hand. I'll just admit, this playthrough of the mission got out of hand. But let's pull back into the mechanics of Rebirth. So instead of the normal game where you play your hand, there's a row of cards and a supervillain. You play your hand, you get your row of cards, you try to beat the supervillain. All the cards that you find go into your hand. They're villains and equipment and superpowers and heroes and all this stuff, and they just build your hand up. And then if you have the crisis expansions, there's a crisis card. You have to get through the crisis. That's a little different. But this one, you have spaces that you have to move to. I can't just buy a card from the middle. I have to be in that space or have a card that allows me to buy a card in an opposite space, something like that. There's a level of movement that was put into Rebirth that changes it around. You can't just buy the cards. You have to be able to move. And the threat tracker with the villains come out. Whenever a super villain comes out, the threat tracker comes out. All those things are different, and I like the different. So like I said, this one went way off the tracks. I decided to stop because I was almost 2 hours in. I was obviously going to lose this one. I didn't stop because I was going to lose it, but I was obviously going to lose it. I wanted to kind of get this video out for you guys. And it does get a little frustrating with that, but I also want to play it again. The first thing I thought when I was setting up to make this video was I want to reset and start over again. I messed up somewhere in the beginning and it's caused it to go this wildly out of control. Or you can look at it as the fun of how wildly out of control it goes. It depends on how you get it. But the differences that Rebirth brings to the DC deck building is interesting. So if you're a fan of DC deck building, right, this brings a different way to play it, right? And the mechanics bring that in. Now, if you're just thinking about picking it up, I would not recommend necessarily picking up Rebirth. I would say pick up one of the regular deck builders, see if you like it. All right, so there's the mechanics. Like I said, if you want to know exactly how it plays, look at the playthrough video. If I remember, I'll put it in the in cap, in screen, whatever the thing is on YouTube. But the mechanics change it up enough for people who are DC deck building fans that I think it makes it fun. It makes it a little different, a little more engaging. And like I said, it keeps making me want to come back and play it. And with my other playthroughs that I did, it definitely, I don't know if it's set up that way, but it feels like you get close to the end of the deck before you win. So every time I play it before, I'm getting close to the end of that deck before, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to win this one. And then you get the win, you're like, yes, I won it. This one, I know that's not going to happen. I could be a little bit wrong, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't going to happen. I got myself so bogged down by letting the villains get to their destination, which has them attack you every round, instead of just the villain in your spot attacking you, makes it go crazy. And like I said, I don't know if it's Mr. Mixelplix being out there causing more problems. But anyways, so the mechanics are good, but I would also say if you're just going to jump into DC deck building, I wouldn't start with Rebirth. All right. So now the cost. I actually made sure I looked it up this time. MSRP on this now is $45. It used to be $39.99, so I guess $40. And it's gone up $5. Shipping problems, all this stuff leads to inflation. All right, and that's what's going on. And as I was getting ready to make this video, I was thinking about, I don't know if I like it or not, because they don't have to get that money out there for thinking of the game and getting it, paying the people sitting down that thought up the game and all that kind of stuff. I feel like the development is not there, but what have you. This version I did get, and I will do the shout out to the Gaming Goat. They had it for $28 or $28.99. I actually got it, I think, I know it was on Black Friday, and they were giving it actually like 10 or 15% off. I ended up grabbing it. I figured this can be the best bet now, especially with the price going up. But right now, the MSRP is $45. Is it worth $45? I would say maybe. And the reason I say maybe is, if you're a fan of DC deck building, or if you're like me and it's a bad habit, you feel like you got to collect it all. This is why I never got into those collectible card games. I have friends always like, oh, have you ever played Magic or Pokemon when you were younger? And I knew I want to collect, and that's part of the problem. So if you love the game or you feel like you need to get everything, then you might pick this up. I would say it's worth it if you really like DC deck building. And one of the things I noticed when I introduced the original versions, the main version, we'll say, of DC deck building, Morgan, which you guys have met in an older video if you guys have been watching videos, one of the things she didn't like was there wasn't a cooperative sense to it. And I know people do play it that way, but there are points at the bottom of the card, and it's going to be hard for you guys to see out there, but there's a little star at the bottom. It gives you points. And at the end, you kind of see who is the superest of superheroes, and that's who wins. That's when you bring in the Crisis expansions, which makes it co-op. But this brings the co-op in the box. So what I would say is, if you have the DC deck building game and you want some co-op to play and you haven't bought the Crisis, they're called Crisis something, I can't remember, but the Crisis expansions, you could pick this up, right? And I think it's worth the $45 if you enjoy playing the game. If you're new to the game, I would say scour around, look around, find the original version of deck building, DC deck building. There's a whole bunch of iterations, or one that fits your style. Anyone outside of this one is the original gameplay. I would say check that out first. Now, going into would I play it? Would I play it again? Yes, I would play this again. Definitely would play it again. And would I ask to play it again, or ask people to play it? Yes. I really want Resvon to play it, and I think she'll be able to, but it's one of those things where she has to get here, because still at this point, I know it's frustrating us too, but still at this point, she's in Tehran, I'm here. We have to video chat all of our games, or do over whatever video conferencing, however you want to look at it. And that's how we have to play all of our games. So it'd be really hard for her to be able to look at the threat tracker and look at all these things. And Resvon's fear is that she's not very good at speaking English or reading English. She's better than she thinks she is, but it would take her a minute to sit there and look at the cards and understand what's going on. So this is definitely a game where she's going to have to get here. Now maybe I'll get Damon in on this, or I might get some of my other friends who are at least interested to sit down and play it with me. The other thing is, I threw it all off to the side. You could play this as as a campaign, right? And that's what's fun. You get cards that bump up for the campaign and all that kind of stuff. That goes kind of back in the mechanics, but you can play it as a campaign. That makes it fun. The other games it's just a one-shot play. This you play as a campaign. You gain cards, lose cards. There's right here side missions that give you cards to put in the main deck that kind of follow you through. These come out in the second scenario and you kind of follow them through. I got one of the side missions done, but you follow them through until the end of the game. But I would definitely ask someone, or will be asking someone, to play this game. So I definitely ask people to play this game. So overall, what do I think about the game? I think it's fun. I think it's engaging. And I also think it can be frustrating. So just to recap, like I said, if you are new or you're interested, you like the DC universe, you like deck building, or a lot of people kind of dive into games. This is one of the early games that I bought too that got me into the board gaming hobby. I would pick one of the other games. I would say grab this one. If you've either played one of the others, right, and you really like it, then this one will change it up a little bit. But yeah, I would say grab this one if you already have one and you want a little change up to that DC deck building, right? And of course, if you're a collector, you're going to grab it anyways. I don't have to explain that. So that's my review. I think it's good, but with caveats, right? It's good with caveats. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope my rambling made sense, kind of all over the place. Getting bogged down as I did in this one's kind of got my head spinning, and I'm constantly trying to think, well, maybe I did this, if I did this differently. But hopefully you enjoyed the review. I'm Steven with Cardboard Coalition. I'll see you later, everybody. Bye.